From pots to planters, patios to gardens, nothing tastes better than fresh, mouth-watering,
Just smells delicious.
homegrown fruit and veg.
Freshness, pleasure and achievement. And that is what all this is about.
So join Mrs T and me
Well done, Alison. Good day's work.
and the rest of the Love Your Garden team
And they'll flower and they'll look absolutely beautiful.
in our gardens.
Look at that! As we reveal the secrets to growing your own.
Beautiful.
This week,
All right, I know you're hungry.
we're filling every last patch of soil
You get glorious aromas assailing your nostrils.
and using every trick in the book
Like something off at Starship Enterprise.
to get the most from our veggies
And get whole new plants for free.
and surrounding our crops with beautiful flowers.
These will carry on flowering till the first frosts of autumn. You know, at this time of the year, when the sun's at its highest, the days are at their longest, and every single leaf and flower is enjoying the sunshine and hopefully the gentle rain, our gardens are transformed. Remember the strawberry pot I planted up a few weeks ago? Look at it now. The secret with this has been to keep it gently moist at all times. Strawberry pots can be an absolute monkey for drying out because these little pockets down the sides tend to drain quickly. So I've been very careful to make sure they've stayed damp as well. Plenty of sunshine, and then we're absolutely covered in strawberries.
On the veg patch, some plants just need a support as they grow, but others require more careful handling.
Including my runner beans on the grandchildren's wigwam. Up they're going. Do you see? Some of them, though, are a bit reluctant to twine. I've given them a piece of string to set them off, but still one or two aren't sure where they're going, so I just always give them a bit of a helping hand. Worth checking every couple of days. As soon as they start spiralling up there, that'll be away now. It now knows where it is, and off it will go.
Now we're well into the growing season, I want to fill every last inch of space I still have. In between a row of leeks and parsnips, I'm going to squeeze in what's known as a catch crop.
What I'm going to use here is spring onions. Now, if I were to put beetroot or another root crop alongside the parsnips, they'd compete for underground nutrition. But these spring onions are quite narrow and slender. They'll come up between the two and won't compete too much.
Even in containers, planting fast-growing catch crops like spring onions in the gaps between slower-growing veg means you'll have something to harvest while you wait for your late-season crops.
Kind of plant them in little clusters rather than separate them into individuals. They really won't mind.
I've got them here about 4 or 5 inches from the rows on either side of them because the leeks and the parsnips won't overcrowd them.
This is also a perfect time of year to add another type of treat to my veg patch.
Kitchen gardens have always been places where you have cut flowers as well as vegetables, things to feed the soul as well as the tummy. So I grow peonies here. I mean, look at that. Do you know what it's called? Pillow talk. I didn't name it. The thing about peonies is don't plant them too deeply. They've got big fat tubers like a yam or a sweet potato. Keep them really near the surface of the soil, then they'll settle in and they'll flower reliably.
In other gaps in the bed, I'm planting more cut flowers, starting with a row of cosmos. The flowers appear within weeks. They'll come back each time you cut them, and they're just as happy in outdoor containers and pots.
Spacing them about a foot apart because they make quite a big branched plant. They'll be way up here, and that gives them room to spread sideways. And every time you cut a flower, you'll encourage the plant to branch a little bit and produce some more.
Do you want your head in it?
Quite like my head in it.
Oh, you know,
Are you fed up with my head?
possibly.
Really good watering in, and we're settled.
For real drama, I'm also adding a plant that'll give me stunning big-headed blooms every year.
This is a dahlia tuber. They grew last year, they're perennial, and you plant these any time from the end of May right the way through June. There are so many flower forms: spiky cactus dahlias, decorative round ones, tight pom-poms in a whole range of colours.
First, I'm adding organic matter to the soil. Then, I plant each tuber so it sits 5 centimetres below ground level. A stake will support them as they grow.
And the great thing is that these will carry on flowering till the first frosts of autumn.
While I'm making the most of every inch of my veg patch, Frances has plans for a different part of her plot.
Everything is growing really well now. My first tomato flowers are just forming down there, and I have some strawberries which are ripening nicely. I have eaten one, it was delicious. The fig was getting a little bit thirsty because it's still in its pot, so I've just put a bottle of water there upside down which feeds it directly to its roots, and that's improved its appearance a lot in this dry weather. And the hop is absolutely enormous. In fact, it won't be many days before it's taller than the ladder. But what is still looking very bare is that wall over there, the dining room window wall. So I want to make that view a lot nicer.
Frances is going to improve her view and save some pennies by creating a waste not, want not window box using leftovers from her shopping.
I'm a big fan of propagating things myself from the supermarket that you'd normally just throw away in the bin and get whole new plants for free.
Frances will propagate by taking cuttings from an existing plant and growing them to create new plants.
So things like a bulb fennel, leeks, lemongrass, spring onion and chicory. And it could not be more easy. I'll do some celery. Take that basil area, which is where the roots will form, and you chop it nice and neatly with a clean knife. And then once you've cut it, you just put it into a glass and fill that with water, and you'll find it will start shooting new growth at the top within about a week. And they all do it at slightly different rates. So things like lemongrass will root very quickly, as will leeks and spring onions, and fennel and celery take a little bit longer to form roots, but they very quickly form lovely, healthy shoots. And they'll sit there for a few weeks until they have roots.
She's already been propagating new veg that's ready to go outside. And is going to plant them in a homemade window box made from leftover timber.
There are lots of different ways to hang a window box, but one of the most simple, especially with a small one like this, is 2 hefty hooks in the wall with raw plugs, and then 2 hooks on the box itself. There we go. Now the idea is that when you're looking out the window, it will look a little bit like a meadow, but it will actually all be entirely edible. I've never actually grown things like this before, so it's a little bit of an experiment. I've always managed to get them to root and grow in the water, but not seen how they then do in soil, so we'll see. So basically just putting the spring onions, dotting them around as spaced out as I can. Now because these are vegetables, the further apart they are, the bigger they'll get. So bulb fennel is a really delicious herb. It's one of my favourite herbs. The foliage of them is so feathery and light and beautiful. It's a really stunning plant. See how that one grows. And then finally the leek. There. Now that is my plants from my old veg.
With the final addition of some hazel twigs, spring onions and fiery orange nasturtiums, for less than a tenner, Frances now has her own indoor and outdoor plant nursery.
And I'll be able to enjoy them in my cooking, and when I'm sitting there at my dining room table and looking out at this lovely framed view.
Throughout the growing season, to ensure my crops stay healthy, I'm keeping an eye out for unwanted visitors.
Now there are irritations when it comes to growing vegetables, and we call them pests and diseases. And if you're growing broad beans, you will undoubtedly get black fly, black bean aphid.
Aphids suck the sap from plants, weakening their growth.
And it colonises the tops of your broad beans. So what you can do is just cut off the tips of your broad beans as soon as they start to attack, because it's those tender tips that they go for.
You can deter pests by planting certain flowers. The smell of French marigolds I've planted amongst my tomato plants helps ward off whitefly.
When it comes to lettuces, slugs love them. Now, I don't like using slug pellets. They can poison thrushes and hedgehogs, as well as slugs and snails, so kinder to use organic methods. Try and catch them if you can.
Slugs love shady spots, so a carved-out grapefruit skin makes a great trap.
Nice and shady, and then you can take them and release them somewhere where they don't matter.
One of the joys of growing your own is that you can grow your family's favourite veg to order.
Look, there's that kale. Look how big it is.
And today, David's planning something special for the newest member of the Dominic clan.
We've got another favourite here, which all of us love, but Lancey in particular, and that's the sweet potato. All right, I know you're hungry.
Richer in fibre and vitamin C than ordinary spuds, sweet potatoes are great to grow for the little ones. This time of year, it's best to grow them from veg plants in a greenhouse. His is full to the brim, so David's had to find another solution.
So I'm going to grow my sweet potatoes in cold frames.
Perfect for smaller spaces, a cold frame protects tender crops if there's a cold snap and traps heat inside when it's sunny.
You can buy these, anything from £50 to, I suppose, 500, depending on the size of them. But I thought I'd have a go and make it myself. So what I've done is I've built a framework up, taller at the back, shorter at the front. And then I've taken another plank and cut it in half like that. And I'm going to use this as the slope. And then the frame just fits on top.
For the lid of his cold frame, to make it safe for the children, instead of glass, David's using durable, heat-retaining perspex.
Best thing to do is to buy an offcut. An offcut is a fraction of the price of what you pay normally, and then build the cold frame around it.
David's cut 2 frames for the roof to sandwich the perspex and screws them together, holding it in place.
Now I've left a slat out there for a reason. When the rain falls, it can wash straight off. A couple of hinges at the back, and there we've got it, a working roof.
Sweet potatoes love warmth, so David's adding layers of compost and grass as a base.
Probably about 2/3 grass to 1/3 compost. And that warmth will give well-needed boost to the sweet potatoes. They should perform really well. I'm going to try and get 4 good plants in here. In you go.
With regular watering, David's sweet potatoes should be ready for harvesting in early autumn.
I'm not going to close that completely. I'm going to put that just in there so there's a little bit of ventilation, but the heat from the rotting grass, from the sun through the top here, and also warming up the wood as well, should get these off to a really good start.
David's built another cold frame for one of Mrs. Dominic's favourite vegetables, aubergines. You can grow them outside, but they'll need a good summer. By planting in a cold frame, you've a better chance of a decent harvest.
You know, each one of these will probably sustain about, 5 or 6 decent-sized fruits.
Once each plant starts to flower, David will give them a dilute liquid tomato feed once a week to help them grow.
We've got your sweet potatoes and we've got Mummy's aubergines. What do you think of that?
Good job, Lancey.
The wonderful thing about a British summer is that on good days you can eat outdoors, and Alison and I have had lunch and supper out here most days on this terrace, haven't we, dear?
We have.
It's been lovely. And the one thing we love is sliced tomatoes sprinkled with
Basil.
Basil is Britain's biggest selling herb. You can grow it indoors and outdoors, and in the height of summer, we always have a container full of different varieties to pick from at lunchtime.
Now this is your bog standard supermarket basil. Very tasty, lovely, nothing wrong with it, but it's nice to have a change. This one is Greek basil, tiny leaves, and it's a sort of slightly more complex scent, it's a bit more peppery. This one is called African blue basil, and it has a sort of spicy fragrance to it. This one here is cinnamon basil. And when you just slightly rub those leaves, you do indeed get a tang of cinnamon. And the one at the front is purple or red-leaved basil.
Basil plants need plenty of sunlight and are prone to fungus if they're planted too close together.
In goes the African blue.
So I'm spacing my plants 10 centimetres apart so they get air circulating round them.
It's a wonderful job doing this. You get glorious aromas assailing your nostrils. Tends to be one of those herbs that loves it warm and sunny and then, shrivels up come the colder weather. But when it's like this, perfect basil weather. There we are, a lovely herb pot that looks good on the table with basil in it, ready for your meal.
But I've recently discovered another use for the spicy purple variety.
Now, you've heard of ship in a bottle. This is basil in a bottle. Take 1 bottle of gin and top up. Then put the cork on the top and leave it to infuse there for about a week, 10 days, until you see the colour change.
It's a little early for tomatoes from the garden.
I think we'll have the Greek basil on top of it. Oh, how posh is that?
But when they're ready, we'll be able to garnish them with different flavours all summer.
And a basil gin and tonic. Looks a bit lurid. Would you like a glass, Alison?
I'd rather have a glass of rosé.
Rather have a glass of rosé. No pleasing some people, is there? Cheers.
It's now been 4 weeks since Katie planted her indoor herb boxes.
They're getting enormous, actually. So based on the fact that these have done so well, I'm going to expand my indoor garden. And I'm also going to try something new. I've always wanted to try the space-age, no-soil hydroponics.
Hydroponics is the science of growing plants in nutrient-enhanced water rather than soil, enabling certain vegetables to be grown indoors. Katie's trying out 2 different priced do-it-yourself kits.
It's like something off at Starship Enterprise.
This basic model isn't cheap, but has all you need to grow from seed. It has a base into which Katie adds liquid feed and water.
And then all the kits pretty much have a basket then, which your growing medium goes in and your seeds.
And the small pot is only big enough for herbs or a small veg plant.
I'm using parsley for this. Research says that things should grow 20% quicker and you'll get a better yield. And now, I've got to plug it in. Sounds bonkers, doesn't it?
Unless you have an LED light, you'll need a sunny window to place it by, but within a week, green shoots generally start to appear. For darker rooms and bigger budgets, this faff-free model comes with its own artificial light.
Feeds itself, waters itself, and it's got these lights up here and give bigger, better growth.
It claims to be able to grow 4 different types of herbs or baby veg in just 4 weeks. You just pop them in like a toaster, add water and turn on the light.
And there we go, my own little herb garden.
As a final touch to her indoor garden, Katie's discovered another way that plants can benefit her home.
I'm going to beautify my homemade hydroponics by making a lovely arrangement of top oxygenating houseplants. Now, all plants photosynthesize, so they take in carbon dioxide that us humans breathe out and they pump out oxygen. This is Sansevieria, or mother-in-law's tongue as it's commonly known. But this one is really efficient at it. It also does what other plants don't, is it does it on the night time, so it's perfect for putting in bedrooms.
To create a striking display, Kate is adding the contrasting foliage of devil's ivy and a spider plant.
The humble spider plant has been found to quietly get rid of lots of toxins in the air in our households, and this will really help to make the air that little bit sweeter. It's not a bad day's gardening. And to think I did it all in my slippers.
Hopefully by now you'll be enjoying the first fruits from your veg patch.
Well, I've looked at them all day. This is the moment of supreme reward. Give you some strawberries now, all right? Yummy!